Now live,
Okay.
coming to you live from the worldwide headquarters of Citizen Journalism School with Lee Stranahan. Hello,
Hey, buddy.
Lee.
No, so we're supposed to pretend we're just meeting?
Well, no. But
Okay, good. I just wanted to say, that's fine.
You know, you were one of the very first guests ever on Crowdsource the Truth.
Really?
Yeah, right here at the...
So how long have you been doing this now?
2 years. It's almost to the day. I think the first
Wow.
video I put out was October 16th about the petrodollar and my concerns about how it's had ongoing impact on U.S. foreign policy.
That's a very good question now with the Khashoggi thing, by the way.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Now, everybody's been saying this guy Khashoggi is just a journalist, but isn't it true that there's a lot more to his history? I mean, we've seen this photo of him hanging out with the Mujahideen. His uncle was Agnan Khashoggi.
Yeah, no, we've talked about that. The thing I don't understand, I really mean it, like, so why does it matter? In other words, I break this story down in a real simple way. Nobody seems to be denying that he went into the consulate, right?
Pictures of it.
Nobody's saying he
Right.
did not go. The Saudis aren't saying he didn't go. Then, question mark.
Right.
And to me, I got two groups of people who I don't trust here: the Saudis and the Turks.
Right.
The official, I don't trust Erdogan's government, and I don't trust the kingdom at all. So, but the big question is, this guy walks in, what happened? So, in a sense, I don't care who he is. Like it doesn't make any difference if they killed him. I mean, so he's a journalist in the sense. He was writing pieces for the Post and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He's as much a journalist as most people in this town.
John Podesta writes for the Post.
Which is not much, right? So it's all public relations. That's what goes on in this town. And but in a sense, like, it's interesting maybe, but the first part I want to get to is but what happened? And the Saudis don't seem to have an answer. So the dude walks in. What's your next part? And I also am not. I compare this to the way they treated Russia.
Yeah.
In the Skripal case, or treated Syria.
Right.
In the case of the white helmets, and then we launch missiles into them. There's no well, hey, maybe we should figure out whether this thing actually happened.
Right.
Which I prefer them to do. So I actually like I'm more comfortable with the pace this is going, where it's like, let's see if we can figure this out first.
Right.
But
it's looking weird.
At this point, it's weird. The fact that Pompeo is saying, well, and Trump said one of the most honest things I've ever heard a politician say, which is he said, well, we can't stop selling arms to the Saudis because it would hurt the U.S. economy.
I thought that was a terrible thing, though. I mean, I get it where he's coming from, but
he's telling the truth, and that should frighten everybody. It should frighten. No, it really should. Our economy should not be dependent,
right,
on selling weapons
to terrorist sponsors.
Right. It should not. There's no part of our economy that we should not be so worried about it. We can't stop. We can't stop selling.
Right. Can't we train these people to build Harley Davidsons or something like that? Xboxes?
A lot of people agree that we shouldn't be dependent on Saudi oil.
Yeah.
If that's true, we really shouldn't be dependent on Saudi arms sales. And Trump was saying just stopping selling country to this one country could hurt our economy. That's bad. It really is.
But isn't what he really saying is that we're so dependent on the relationship with Saudi Arabia for keeping this petrodollar system afloat that if we do anything to upset them, we're screwed?
Well, he wasn't saying that, but that's also true. He was very clear. That statement was just like the arms industry would be too hurt by it. It wasn't the other stuff. So I did this on my show this morning. I talked about 5 things.
We should plug the show, too.
Sure. Yeah.
Nixon and...
Well, we should say hi to people.
Do we
not do that?
Your periscopes are always very personal, and this is, sort of you and I having a talk. I don't even have the laptop here for comments. I could try to get the comments on the phone. But, of course, people can hear you every day on Sputnik Radio with Garland Nixon.
Fault lines, and the easiest way to find that is my Twitter feed,
Okay.
Where if they follow my Twitter feed, they can watch the video feed,
right.
which is the best, in my opinion,
right.
the best way to watch it, because we do a lot of...
and I can get Twitter on here, of course. You're on there at Stranahan. You're tweeting all the time. Loads of great stuff, loads of great stories. This petrodollar thing has bothered me for some time, Lee.
It's a big deal.
It's a big deal. And most people, even really educated people, have no idea what it is. They think it's got to do with the price of oil and all that. But it's basically forcing everybody in the world to have to use dollars to purchase oil, right?
Yeah, and it also has to go, this goes back to, some of this stuff goes back to the Nixon administration, too.
Well, he took us off the gold standard, and then everybody's least favorite scumbag, Henry Kissinger, made this deal essentially with the devil, with the Saudi royal family, where everybody has to buy and sell oil with dollars, creating this worldwide demand for dollars. The Saudis are buying trillions of dollars in treasury bills, and they're holding this, like, you know, gavel over our heads.
And they've done it multiple times. They're doing it now, but they also did it with the 28 pages.
Yes.
Where they immediately threatened that if this went...
sell the debt.
Yes, that's right. That if this went forward, they would do it. So it's a pattern of behavior with it.
And
this is just what they do, right?
Right. How can we allow our country to be beholden to such a rogue regime like that?
Well, it's worse than that. So we said we do the Russiagate thing.
I know we're going to get to that, but it's an interesting.
It's about to head into a rabbit hole from which we will not be able to escape. I'm just telling you.
Okay.
It would be if I get into the.
Twitter doesn't go sideways, huh? On its app, it seems.
I'm not sure. So if I get into this, it becomes a long thing. And actually, I will say I'm going to do probably tomorrow a long Periscope, maybe tonight.
Okay.
Probably not. I'm tired, but I'm going to do a long Periscope about the Saudi thing. I haven't done one in a while, but the relationship goes back to the 1700s between the House of Saud and the House of Wahhab, which is the formation of Wahhabism, and where they married. Where the son of Wahhab married into the daughter of the Saudi family. So this goes back to the 1700s, when Wahhab thought Islam, I want to point this out, thought Islam was too modern.
Right.
In the 1700s.
Yeah, wow.
So
wanted to chop more heads and stuff like that.
Yeah, pre-Barbary, you know.
So real quick, people can get you on Twitter at Stranahan.
Yeah.
And that's a nice new graphic you've got there, Lee. What is that background graphic?
Where at?
It looks like, it's DC. It's the Capitol
building.
It is
DC, yeah. That's a graphic I use for one of the animated logos for Populous TV.
Right, Populous.tv, Citizen Journalism School.
Yeah.
You're a guy who's got his finger in a lot of pies.
Yeah.
Very busy man.
It's all connected, though.
Yeah, of course.
It's all connected.
To real, honest journalism.
You can't. So there's no possible way. People want journalism to get better. Obviously, someone's going to need to be able to teach journalism, right? And I just said, okay, well, I'll just start doing that. And the state of journalism is so bad right now.
Yeah.
It's so bad that people don't even have a real grasp of how bad it is. It's so bad that I made the suggestion this morning. I said that I feel like everything that comes from the government, whatever government it comes from, should have a label at the bottom that says, let's say Saudi Arabia releases a statement. We have no idea what happened to Khashoggi. It should say at the bottom, this brought to you by, not the government, but it should say, brought to you by the Saudi Arabian Tourist Board. And the reason I say that is, have you ever had the experience of you're reading something on the internet and you see a news story and you start to read it, you're like, well, this looks like a nice island.
Right.
Oh, the hotels seem affordable. And then you realize it says at the bottom, brought to you by the Belize Tourist Board or whatever. And you're like, oh, you tricked me. Yeah. I thought this is a real news story.
That's
Turns
funny.
out I'm just reading some BS PR stuff. Can we swear?
Yeah, you say whatever you want.
Some bullshit, right? That's what it is, some bullshit. And you go, oh, okay. Now maybe I'll do a little research before I book that trip. So if you saw that from this brought to you by the United States Tourist Board,
you'd have a different perspective.
You go, wait a minute. So this is PR, because that's what it is. It's public relations.
I've noticed that YouTube has started saying, hey, RT is owned by the Russian government. They might say it for Sputnik too.
And BBC is they say BBC is owned by the. But what they don't tell you is
CNN is owned by a bunch of criminals.
Exactly right. The 6 companies that control the media in all of the world. They don't tell you that, and they don't tell you who the funders are and everything else. So.
It's crazy. It's crazy. So, they don't tell you that Twitter is owned by Al-Walid bin Talal. So just real quick to wrap up the Saudi thing, because that's obviously a series. It's a mini-series.
These are both big stories,
But Al-Walid bin Talal, all these guys who were like in control of the Saudi government previously, when Mohammed bin Salman came in and we had the Saudi purge back in 2017, and they hung him upside down at the Ritz-Carlton or whatever they put him. It seems quite a bit like John Brennan is now suddenly anti-Saudi because MBS is friends with Trump. John Brennan converted to Wahhabi Islam, has been to Mecca.
Well, I don't. So I've heard that about Brennan. I have no idea.
Kevin Shipp has said that is corroborated by the fact that John O'Brennan himself has made the statement that it was breathtaking to behold Mecca and Medina.
I'd have to see. Well, but that it doesn't do it. So we do this, and I just me. Whenever there's something that I don't know for sure, I always go, okay.
That's a thing.
I'll say I don't know that for sure.
Right.
But if someone's got proof or whatever, great. But the significant thing that I see happening, I was just talking to a writer about this, is that I'm seeing people on the right being fooled by years of propaganda that is paid PR propaganda, exactly when I say propaganda, I mean as clear as it can be, paid propaganda, which is focused almost exclusively on the right, on the Muslim Brotherhood, and has paid almost no attention whatsoever to the Muslim World League. And this has been created, this funding situation has been created by the pro-Likudnik Zionist Israel funders who fund much of the right.
Okay.
And who are allied, because Israel right now is working with Saudi Arabia.
Right.
And that's
crazy.
Right. It is crazy. And it creates a lot of cognitive dissonance for people because they are pro-Israel, and most people on the right are very pro-Israel.
Right.
And they go, okay. Then they're trying to figure out, well, wait a second. Why is Israel, if they hear about it, they go, why is Israel sending jihadists into Syria? And then and it's confusing for them. So what they need to know...
It's the same thing U.S. is doing.
And what they need to know is that there's this misdirection of telling people, oh, just look at the Muslim Brotherhood, just look at the Muslim Brotherhood, just look at Iran, just look at Iran. Don't pay any attention to the Muslim World League. It's very dangerous because if you look up every major terror group in the world, Al-Shabaab, Boko Haram, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, I can keep going, every major one who commits all the acts of terrorism, they're all Salafi, Wahhabist fundamentalist groups, which is the state religion of Saudi Arabia from the time the two families, before Saudi Arabia was declared in 1932, forgive me, before the kingdom was declared in 1932, they had this alliance. And they're all Salafi groups. The only group is Hamas. And Hamas...
The only group, what? That's
not a Salafi...
that
does not fit squarely into that definition, who does terror acts, but they're against Israel. So you'll hear people say, well, you'll hear people in the Trump administration, Mike Pompeo, Iran is the biggest state sponsor of terror in the world.
I thought Saudi Arabia was.
Absolutely.
So why do they say that?
Because they want to misdirect people from focusing on Saudi Arabia and realizing that everything bad about Iran, and there's plenty bad about Iran, is actually worse
in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. So if you don't like the way, oh, well, in Iran, they treat women, okay, yes, the Saudi Arabians worse. Okay, just everything. The mullahs, okay, well, you've got the muftis, you've got the same structure in Saudi Arabia. The difference is we've said, well, they're our ally.
Right.
And, you know, the 15 of the 9/11 hijackers were not Iranian. So, and when you look at the stuff that was hidden in the 28 pages, it was all stuff that was very bad for Saudi Arabia.
It was all Saudi financing and organizing. And
now, I think the worst thing than the Khashoggi thing, by far, has been what's been going on with Yemen, which we've been supplying the weapons for, and is far more of a catastrophe. But I'm not diminishing his death, but one person's death compared to the 800,000 people about to starve in Yemen, is bigger. But I'll take whatever.
Well, to bring us back to Russia,
but I don't want the right to be fooled by this,
right?
Because they've been fooled for way too long.
Russia is part of this because obviously they're there in Syria. Saudi Arabia seems intent on destroying Bashar Assad, taking over the oil pipeline, getting in there to the.
So it's yes, but it's actually the Golan Heights oil is very significant, and I think we've talked about Genie Energy before.
Yeah.
Just anybody can
Cheney.
Look it up. Look up
usual suspects.
Look up Genie Energy. It's a Rothschild. It's one of the Rothschild. If you look up the Genie Energy Advisory Board, you just Google it, you'll find it. You'll find it on their own website. It's Rupert Murdoch, Dick Cheney, Democrats like Mary Landrieu, Bill Richardson. Bill Richardson's with APCO, which is a big PR lobbying company. Keep that name in mind. When we talk about the Russia stuff, APCO, and it's James Woolsey, former CIA director. So it just shows how globalists work.
Yeah, this
is exactly how globalists work, and it's Rupert Murdoch. So here's a wider context. A lot of what's going on in Russia, this may surprise you, but it's provable. And everything I'm going to say, if people Google it, they will go, oh, yeah, he's right. This is exactly what's going on here. Believe it or not, a lot of what's going on with the Russiagate thing is about oil. And specifically, it's about the U.S. trying to get Russia's oil.
Wow.
Specifically.
We haven't really heard that. I mean, we've heard a lot about uranium. We've heard a lot about
misdirection. Now, when I say this, so let's drill down to some stuff you can look up easily that I tell people all the time. There's nothing tricky about this. So let's just talk about this. Yukos Oil, Y-U-K-O-S. Yukos Oil was one of the big oil companies in Russia. And it was bought by a guy named Michael Khodorkovsky. Khodorkovsky was at one point the richest guy in Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union. This is all after the fall of the Soviet Union.
Right.
So Khodorkovsky is the richest guy in Russia. He's one of the Russian oligarchs. Nobody's heard about him.
Yeah.
Except he's at the center of all of this. So, for instance, let's tie it into something very specific. Like the Trump Tower meeting was about the Magnitsky Act and Bill Browder.
Yes.
What if I told you the Magnitsky Act was about the investors of Yukos Oil and Michael Khodorkovsky?
Let's talk about this Magnitsky Act for a second. That was about children being adopted.
No.
The guy dying in jail.
Here's what it is. It's a Trojan horse. Anybody can. This is a law that was passed in 2012. It was supported by John McCain and Ben Cardin. Okay, and it was supposedly for stopping human rights violators,
right? And
saying that if somebody's put on this list, you can seize their bank accounts and not let them come into the country.
Sounds like Trump's executive order.
Yes, it's very dangerous for exactly the reason you're saying, except this is a congressional law, okay? But it wouldn't affect you because it's only people in other countries.
They just did that to Deripaska's mansion in New York.
That's exactly right. And by the way, but I'll get to the scary part because you might go, well, it couldn't affect me. Well, it could, but I'll explain why. But not this version. I'll explain what they did with it. So here's the thing. When the story is reported in the media, you're told the Magnitsky Act, which you can find the text of the law. It's a law. 2012, you can find the text.
Right.
You'll find a couple things in that law that they mention. Number one, they mention Khodorkovsky, who I just mentioned.
In the law?
Oh, yeah. But also they mention part of the law is to protect the American investors of Yukos oil.
Whoa.
You'll find it right in the law.
Wow.
What I told you, this is what it's about. I'm not joking. You'll find it right in there. Now, wait, why is this human rights law doing this?
Yeah.
Let me ask you another question. What's the mechanism by which they decide who gets put on this list?
No idea.
And the answer is, so if I told you, for instance, that it was if the UN Commission on Human Rights determines, right, then you might go, I'm not a big fan of the UN, but okay, at least there's some process there, right?
Right.
It's literally a list of people that they just put on for no reason whatsoever. If the State Department decides there's no trial, and the guy Bill Browder behind this law, who made his money in Russia, I'll talk about Browder in a second.
Yeah.
He literally just gave them a list of people.
Wow.
Including people who were investigating him for tax fraud.
Wow.
Police officers who were investigating him for tax fraud. Now, these police officers not only had not been convicted of human rights violations, but they hadn't been charged by anybody.
But yet they're on that
ever,
list.
Because he gave them the list. Okay, so why is this important? Bill Browder, the way he got that law passed is with the help of a guy named Jonathan Weiner.
Okay.
Jonathan Weiner is the longtime friend of Christopher Steele's, who hooked Christopher Steele up with Victoria Nuland in the Ukraine. And Jonathan Weiner is the guy who took the Steele dossier and then made sure it got to the FBI, and he was the one doing that work. And
through John McCain or what?
Yes. That was also David Kramer, another guy who's connected to Ukraine and all of this stuff. But Jonathan Weiner, former State Department, was in the State Department under Obama, worked with Kerry for many, many years, like 30 years, goes back to working with Kerry. He's known as a fixer, right? He's a fixer. What he does is he's able to put together things. He is with a lobbying firm called APCO, APCO. APCO is APCO International. It's one of the world's biggest lobbying firms and political PR firms. And Weiner was an executive with them. Now, Bill Richardson, who I mentioned, is on that Genie advisory board, is also now working at APCO, because they're a big lobbying firm. Now, the way to find this out, and it's all completely easy.
AB, what is it?
APCO.
Yeah.
But here's how you can find them. You've used opensecrets.org before, right? Great website for discovering political contributions. First off, so if you go to Open Secrets and just type in APCO, you'll find a lot of stories about them. But the specific one to look up is Corbiere, Corbie.
On Open Secrets?
R-E, yeah. Look up Corbiere.
Okay, wait, I'm a little behind here. I'm on APCO.
Yeah.
Let's get to
But see, these are the connections that are laying right in plain sight that nobody in the media, left or right, nobody's covering this, and it's just painfully obvious.
It's a huge deal.
Okay, so Corbiere, if you look them up, Corbiere, Corbiere Trust. If you look them up on Open Secrets, you'll find their lobbying reports, okay? And when you look at their lobbying reports, you'll notice they paid a lot of money to APCO. And Corbiere is Michael Khodorkovsky. I say Michael sometimes.
Sorry, Corbiere was C-O...
Corbiere, Corbiere.
C-I-B-I-R-E. Sorry, it's a little tricky on the phone here.
Yeah, it is. It's a weird name. But Corbiere Trust, you'll find it. And you'll see, if you look at their lobbying reports, that they paid money for the Magnitsky Act in 2011, 2012.
Database.
And you'll find that they're connected. So this is Khodorkovsky. This is Corbiere Trust is Khodorkovsky. And if anyone doubts, I'll take you through all that at some point. But that's who they are. And you'll see the lobbying in the Magnitsky Act. That's why Khodorkovsky's mentioned. But I'll show you the part that's really scary, Jason.
Yeah, I think I don't have the right thing. This is 2014. It's only showing $45,000.
No, if you go through it, you can pick different years.
Yeah, which year should we do?
2011, 2012. Okay. Those are the 2 years before the Magnitsky Act was passed. Mm-hmm. And when it was passed.
Now they're doing $220,000.
Right.
Miscellaneous finance. Oh yeah, there it is. APCO worldwide, 70 grand. Doesn't seem like that much.
That's for that year. But there's also his associate, Khodorkovsky's associate at Menatep, which I'll talk about that in a second. He's got multiple associates. So that's one way through. But you can look up, if you look up Khodorkovsky, you'll find that he's very clear. He was put in jail by Putin in 2003 on tax charges. And
was that a legitimate arrest?
Yes. Because and I'll explain why. But what Khodorkovsky was trying to do is he was trying to sell the West Yukos oil. He was trying to channel, literally take it so after the fall of the Soviet Union, Western interest, including ExxonMobil, and were trying to buy it.
Apart the national
and they
interest.
were starting to realize in Russia, hey, all of our assets are going to be sold out from under our country. So they limited the amount of foreign investment.
Makes sense.
Okay? That's what Putin did.
Yeah.
He limited the amount of foreign investment. So Khodorkovsky was the beard. Khodorkovsky was the guy who was like, I'm Russian, I'll buy it up.
Oh.
And here's how he bought Yukos. It's very significant. So let's back up for a second. Let's go just history.
Putin's got to be pissed that this guy found a loophole.
Yes. But Putin pardoned him too in 2013. I don't think Putin fully gets all of this.
So for the people who say that you're on his payroll, let's just let that be heard.
I am on his payroll, and I wish he'd listen to me. We can't get anybody from Russia on the show.
Why?
Because there's just not, it doesn't work that way. Because it doesn't work that way. I've talked to my boss. I'm like, can we get somebody like they don't really do interviews. But we're Sputnik. But this is just independent, provable. No one's ever asked me to look into this. That's why I say. So when Putin brought up Browder in Helsinki,
that was huge.
We talked about it. It was a huge deal at the time. So here's what it is. Now before I get to this, let me show you the one that's going to blow you away.
Yeah.
So you remember in Sherlock Holmes, the dog that didn't bark?
Yes.
Remember that one?
Yes, I do.
So with the media, you always have to watch out for the dog that didn't bark. So I'm going to show you something and tell me if this should be a story. So it's Senate Resolution 322 from the year 2006.
322?
Senate Resolution 322, Skull and Bones number,
yeah.
I know. I don't know if that's...
That's a thing.
I know, it's a thing, but it's weird, but I don't know what it means. 322, year 2006. So if you look at Senate Resolution 322 in 2006, remember that date, 2006.
Okay.
This is a resolution supporting Michael Khodorkovsky. It was introduced by, have you found it? Who introduced it?
Joe Biden.
Yes, and who are the two co-sponsors? There's two co-sponsors in 2006 supporting Michael Khodorkovsky.
I'm not sure where it shows me that.
It will. You'll find it.
Latest action. Well, tell me.
Barack Obama and John McCain.
Wow. Wow.
It's right in the bill.
Wow.
So here's what I'm saying about the dog that didn't bark. You'd think that during the 2008 election, somebody would have done a story on John McCain and Barack Obama may not have much in common. Let's look at the bills they co-sponsored. Who's Michael Khodorkovsky? Well, he's this billionaire who'd been jailed by Putin, and because he was trying to get the Yukos stuff, that's what happened. He basically so Putin was there were these oligarchs who were real oligarchs. Deripaska, like it's called an oligarch. I don't consider him an oligarch, actually.
What is an oligarch? That's another one of these things we hear all the time, and people think. I just think it's a rich guy.
It's not. It's the area of collaboration between the government and business. In other words, if you're just a straight businessman, you have some dealings with the government, but if you made your money by doing things that you're only getting away with because you have government help,
with the government.
That's
so Hillary Clinton is an oligarch.
Absolute. Soros, I consider.
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay, we back?
Yes.
Okay, you sure?
Positivo.
Okay, so follow the Soviet Union. The short version of this is follow the Soviet Union. All the state-held assets need to be privatized. So they try to figure out how to do it in a way that doesn't screw the citizens, right? Because now everything was held by the state. So now they're going to sell off the oil companies and the media companies and everything.
Right.
So they come with a voucher system. And the voucher program, promoted by a guy named Chabayas, the voucher system was like, we'll give you a voucher. And you can trade it. It's worth X amount of stock. So every Russian citizen got one of these vouchers. But the problem was, and I think they knew it, Larry Summers, who's on Genie Energy, who's one of the guys behind this.
Oh, yeah.
At Harvard, right? This is the Clinton administration. They're behind it. It's like if you took people who were devastated by a hurricane, or I'll tell you the analogy I use. It'd be like if after slavery, they said, now I know we talked about 40 acres and a mule, but instead, we're going to give you these Uncle Sam fun bucks. And each one of these Uncle Sam fun bucks is worth $1,000 US in the stock market. So you now are part of the vital economy. Now, you get these people who are basically like
uneducated, nothing about
they're coming out of slavery and Soviet, right? But they just kind of go, now, they look at it and they go, okay, well, I guess I can buy stock now. I don't really know how to do that, but now somebody is smart comes along and goes, hey,
I'll give you cash for your voucher.
I'll give you cash for that fun buck. And they say, I'll give you $10 cash and this glass of water. And you go, great. And this is literally what happened in Russia. The people were trading their vouchers in, and Browder admits this in his book, Red Notice. They would come in, they were buying up vouchers for pennies on the dollar, which means who's getting screwed? The people. This is all under Yeltsin. But they're making out like bandits because they're buying billions of dollars in assets for millions of dollars. Or in the case of Khodorkovsky, here's how he bought Yukos oil. Think about this. He saw it was going to be auctioned. And he saw that the bank doing the auction was worth less than Yukos oil. So he bought the bank Menatip, that was doing the auction. He canceled out the other people who were going to bid. Oh, sorry, you no longer qualify.
That's crazy.
And became the only bidder.
Wow.
And so he was able to buy Yukos oil, which was eventually valued at billions of dollars.
They don't have laws against that?
No, it was a wild west.
Wow.
This is pre-Putin. So these guys are making money hand over fist.
Really raping the country.
Yes. And by the way, a lot of these guys have connections to Israel still. A lot of this connects to, a lot of them have dual citizenship or went back. And part of this is just connected to
dual citizenship with the U.S. and Israel,
or
Russia?
Russia and Israel, right? And so, and you'll see that this stuff comes up. And where as I mentioned the Israel thing, the Saudis before, where it comes up again. These guys were, a lot of them when they fled, went to Israel, or still have connections there. Khodorkovsky went to London, by the way.
There was always a tight connection between Russia. I remember when I was a kid, I would Sundays go to Hebrew school, they'd always talk about doing fundraising drives for Jews in Russia, that they were being oppressed and everything.
I'm convinced some of this is payback for the pogroms. I really am. I'm convinced some of this is because there's a certain level of vindictiveness I see towards the Russians, which historically I go, okay, I see what the problem here is. I don't have any, I'm Irish, I don't have any side in that, but I go, there is a lot of bad blood between Russia, between a lot of I guess the Ashkenazi, you know better than I. The Ashkenazi is a Russian, correct?
Yeah.
So right, they're mad about, and a lot of them were mad about the way they were treated in the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917 and blah blah blah. Right. So I see this with the Ukraine situation too. The Ukrainians, it's like if you step into a beef.
Right.
That you're like you
don't know what the beef is over.
You're right, and you're like, well, I think I can. This should be pretty easy to calm down.
Yeah.
And then you jump into it. You're like, oh, this goes back like 5 centuries.
Right.
I thought we were just talking about import tariffs.
Right.
But really, like the Ukrainians are pissed, and the Russians are equally pissed. And I've heard stuff from both sides, and I get it. But I'm not part of that, so I just report the news. But a lot of this really does seem like vindictiveness. And what we know for absolute clearly happened is about 8 guys became these oligarchs. They became the billionaires. Khodorkovsky became the richest guy.
Why is Deripaska not an oligarch?
He was not one of those guys. He's a guy who's made his money mainly he's a legitimate businessman.
Aluminum stuff.
Right. He's a legitimate businessman. Khodorkovsky was doing the kind of stuff I just explained, like buying the bank and then knocking out the other
cheating,
people.
Obviously.
Another way he made money is through transfer pricing schemes. For instance, he had a company called Avisma. It was the biggest, it was like a titanium company. And then they do something called transfer pricing. Transfer pricing, people have heard of transfer pricing a little bit because Apple got busted doing it. So here's what they do. Like here's a legit business example of transfer pricing. You go, well, we're Apple and we're making all this money. We don't want to pay U.S. tax, corporate tax rate of 35%.
Put some headquarters in Ireland.
So we're going to put a headquarters in Ireland, exactly right. And that will be where our IP for the Mac OS is sold.
So that's where the
it's
tax
registered
rate
there.
applies.
Exactly right. So then they say, oh, well, we didn't really make all this money. Really, most of the money
is made by these 5 guys in Ireland.
Exactly right. That's transfer pricing, right? And there's other ways to do it where you basically buy it from your own company and then you sell it at market value other places. So Khodorkovsky had a transfer pricing scheme with this company, Avisma, and then he sold the company to people, including Bill Browder. This is in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And they were mad because they didn't get the transfer pricing scheme. So they sued. And they did it in one of these places that's got like private bank accounts and court secrecy, except this court decision got out. So through normal happenstance.
Someone leaked it?
No, it wasn't leaked. It was actually revealed in a lawsuit where they put it into discovery or something. So it was like officially out there and the guy was kind of shocked that he'd gotten it. But they were in the suit. They were suing Khodorkovsky. Browder was suing Khodorkovsky, saying we wanted the transfer pricing. Why else would we buy a titanium company? We don't want the titanium.
Wow.
We want the pricing scheme, and that's really what they were doing.
So that's the tax scheme that Putin is talking about. Is this transfer pricing?
That's part of it, and Browder was busted for it well before the Magnitsky Act in 2002. Browder claims that in 2007 I hired this is what he says. I hired the smartest lawyer I knew, Sergei Magnitsky. Magnitsky's not a lawyer, he's an accountant. And he was working with Browder in 2002, according to video I could show you of Bill Browder's sworn deposition in 2015. Right. So he was doing this transfer pricing scheme. Browder's was even skeezier. You could get, there was this region of Russia called Kalmykia, and if you were a veteran, and if you hired a veteran, so let's say I've got a widget company in Kalmykia, and I hire a bunch of Afghan veterans, I get a tax break, right? That's the kind of thing that happens.
Seems reasonable, yeah.
Browder had a shell company there, and he hired veterans, except the veterans, I've seen interviews with them, it's a shell company. So A, there's nothing to do,
right,
and B, they didn't do it. They didn't do the...
So they had a do-nothing job and they didn't even show up for work.
Yes.
That's very Russian.
And he got millions, Browder got millions of dollars in tax rebates for doing
But then he
this.
paid these guys?
No, he sort of. He paid them something. But the minimum that he had to pay them, right, just nothing. And I've seen interviews with these guys. These guys are not executive material. I'll put it like that. It didn't make any difference. They had been veterans, right? So they qualified for this tax scheme.
A lot of heroin addicts.
He talks about this in 2015. He's very open. I mean, they ask him questions about it, and they say, well, did you pay the tax? He goes, yes, I did. You go, can you prove that? He goes, I don't have those papers with me. They're like, well, you were told to bring them since you're under a subpoena. And he's like, I'll get them to you. He never got them. He's making it up. He's lying.
Wow.
He's lying. He's never got those papers to anybody ever, nor does he ever mention the tax problems he got him before. So what this is about is this guy Khodorkovsky, if you look into him, he was spending money hand over fist in the 90s and early 2000s with politicians. He's on the record as saying that politicians are one of the best investments you can make.
Wow.
In business.
He must know Hillary Clinton.
He absolutely does. And by the way, if you go to his website, guess who's
a hockey guy.
Guess who's supporting Khodorkovsky?
Hillary Clinton.
Hillary Clinton. She's right on the website. So
what is that website? How do I find this guy?
Well, if you go to Khodorkovsky.com, Khodorkovsky, easy to spell, Kho, dork. So Kho is the top part. Then dork, OVSKY. Khodorkovsky. And you'll find a picture of him with George Bush.
Wow.
You'll find he's support. I want you to think about what we learned there in Senate Resolution 322. Both the presidential candidates running in 2008 were supporters of Khodorkovsky. They're the sole co-sponsors in 2006 on a bill that the media has never... Go look up. You won't find any stories about it.
Right.
You'll find me talking about it.
So what does this have to do, Lee, with that conversation between Medvedev and Obama where he had the hot mic and he said, I'll have more flexibility after I...
See, I'm not sure what that was about. It may be.
But that's a lot of tight communication.
Obama was originally not in favor of the Magnitsky Act because he was trying to work something with Russia that probably would have been better. What these guys want to do, if you look up Khodorkovsky and you look up the Institute of Modern Russia, that's his group. He's directly connected with Soros, first off. Let's just boom.
Good.
Right, directly works with Soros. And he's got the same game as Soros, which he's a billionaire, right, who makes himself out, I'm a civil rights hero, I'm a human rights hero. My human rights, and he openly talks about life in Russia after Putin. He wants, all they're trying to do is
get rid of Putin
so they can raid the oil resources again, like Khodorkovsky was planning to do. That's why I say every single one of the people involved in this, who's really involved, you can trace them all to this deal and to Khodorkovsky. And once you start looking for Khodorkovsky, and like you just look up Jonathan Weiner, David Kramer, any of these people, you go, oh my God, or I believe Christopher Steele, by the way.
You believe Christopher Steele is hanging out with this crew?
I believe Christopher Steele needs to be asked if he's ever done work for Khodorkovsky.
Well, because obviously these guys all want Trump going nowhere near the Oval Office because Trump is saying, why don't we just make friends with Putin and do business with him? And they're saying, no, why don't we get Putin out of there and steal the rest of the resources?
And keep looting the resources. And people like Tillerson were part of that effort back in he was involved in that Russia stuff. And I'm not saying he did anything
Is
criminal.
that why he got fired?
I don't know. But all these people are around it. It's about the oil, and it's also about keeping the power of NATO. Because the Atlantic Council is the other group who was all over this. And they're very closely connected to this Khodorkovsky group. I'll give you an example. major figure in this whole thing, you'll find a zillion stories by him, is a guy who's a writer. He's a fellow at the Atlantic Council. He's a CNN analyst. He's an editor at the Daily Beast.
Oh, God.
Okay. He worked directly for Khodorkovsky, and he's the guy who wrote the blueprint for the internet censorship we're seeing today. It's a guy named Michael Weiss. Michael Weiss is all of those things. CNN analyst, works for the Atlantic Council, worked for the Institute for Modern Russia. And in 2014, Michael Weiss wrote a report that is literally the blueprint for what we're seeing. And by the way, when Facebook's putting up messages now, and Twitter, saying, watch out, this is fake news. Do you know who they partnered with? The Atlantic Council. The Digital Forensics Lab of the Atlantic Council.
That's crazy.
And Weiss, you'll see it, he admits it. He worked directly for Khodorkovsky.
So basically, we've got a crew of people here that are sort of trying to steal billions of dollars worth of resources from Russia and kill anybody who's getting in the way in any way.
Well,
and you're the only person talking about this.
Well, I don't know if they've killed anybody, but right now. We talk about it on my show all the time. Here's what it is. It's a big story. It's completely out
CNN's not talking about it?
No one's, Breitbart's not talking about it. No one on the right. Because the thing that powers journalism in this town is cowardice and careerism in equal measure. And you don't, I was very comfortable going to work for Russia, because I never believed the Russian narrative. Yeah. So therefore, I wouldn't have gone to work for the Saudis, because I know the truth about the Saudis, for instance. Everything you think, I tell everybody watching, everything you think you know about Putin was fed to you by people working for Michael Khodorkovsky. Wow. And I could show that to you. For instance, you may have heard, like you listen to Frank Gaffney, Center for Security Policy. After the Helsinki thing, he had an interview with a guy named David Satter. David Satter, you look him up, looks like a good guy on the right. He writes for National Review, and he's with the Hudson Institute on the right. And he's the guy, he talks about the Litvinenko case, and he also talks about the Chechen bombing. That's his little job. He talks about those things. Well, when you look into those stories, they're not true. But furthermore, here's the scary thing about David Satter that he doesn't tell you. He doesn't tell you that he knew Bill Clinton in Oxford. And that not only that, he tutored Bill Clinton before Clinton went to Russia the first time, when in the 70s he was at Oxford. And when I say that, if you look it up, you will be able to find David Satter and Strobe Talbott, Strobetalbott. Strobe Talbott is one of Bill Clinton's oldest friends. He was his roommate at Oxford. Strobe Talbott is absolutely central to this peripherally too, and I'll explain why.
So it's always the Clintons.
What's that?
It's always the Clintons.
Yes, it is. It's the Clinton connection to Russia that goes back to the 70s, when Strobe Talbott and David Satter. By the way, David Satter works for Khodorkovsky and is allied with Bill Browder. If you look at it, his role is to go to people on the right and try to tell them one version of the story. Then you got guys who, like Weiss mainly, goes to people at Daily Beast and tells them another version. But it's all directly from Khodorkovsky.
Talbot was the Deputy Secretary of State under Clinton.
What's that?
He was the Deputy Secretary of State under Clinton.
And he was supposed to be the Russian ambassador. But not only that, Talbot married into the Shearer family. Now you got to remember, this goes back to Oxford. Mm-hmm. He married into the Shearer family. His wife, who's now passed away, was one of Lloyd Shearer's, it was his only daughter. This is significant because there's two other Shearer brothers, Derek and Cody. Cody's the one I remember. Derek's the one I forget. So Derek Shearer was the ambassador to Finland under Clinton, and is now teaching at Occidental, interestingly.
Didn't Obama go to Occidental?
He did. So it's interesting. It's interesting. It's a very left school in Pasadena, where I used to live. So that's him. Now, Cody Shearer is a sort of more interesting one. By the way, Lloyd Shearer is really interesting, too. I said that was their dad. Lloyd Shearer, you remember from Parade magazine. Remember the Sunday paper? Every Sunday you get parade, right?
Yeah.
When we were growing up, that was like the news, right? And every newspaper around the country basically had Parade magazine.
The insert. Yeah.
Remember they had like Walter, what was it? I forget the Walter Scott's Personality Parade, and it was a celebrity column that was written by Lloyd Shearer. Lloyd Shearer also wrote a political column. Lloyd Shearer had 50 million readers at one point.
Wow.
Because he's an editor at Parade. He's been friends with the Clintons through his kids since the 70s. And Lloyd Shearer was also friends with a lot of celebrities, of course, because he wrote Walter Scott's Personality Parade and has that. Now, his son Cody was an operative, goes back to working with the Clintons, and one of the stories that he worked on in 1992 was a story about this guy who was in prison who said that he'd sold pot to Dan Quayle. Remember that story?
Vaguely.
Okay, so that story was this guy in prison said, I've sold pot to Dan Quayle. And Cody Shearer was the guy who set that story up.
And at that time, it was kind of a big deal. This was before Bill Clinton had the I didn't inhale. And
that's
whatever.
right. And it was a big deal. They were trying to get something on Quayle. This guy did it. It was a weird story. Doonesbury ended up picking it up. Cody Shearer was at the center of that. Let's flash forward to now. So, Christopher Steele gets the dossier in 2016, after the election, or right around that time. I forget, it could have been October, right around that time. I'm not looking, this is all off the top of my head. So Jay gets it to Jonathan Weiner, okay? And Jonathan Weiner calls Sid Blumenthal and says, I think you should know, and by the way, Jonathan Weiner's admitted to all this in the Washington Post. He said, I called Sid Blumenthal, and he told me, I have this other dossier. That's funny, you have one. I have this other one. I got it from Cody Shearer. Cody Shearer is the operative who I just mentioned. Now, who was the guy in 1992 who was in prison who said he sold weed to Dan Quayle? It's a guy named Brett Kimberlin. Brett Kimberlin, also known as the Speedway Bomber, is a guy I've been writing about for about 7 years. He's a leftist activist who lit off a series of bombs in Indiana, the police think, to cover up a murder that he'd had committed, because he was a major drug dealer. Major, not like a dime bag dealer, like bringing in huge amounts of drugs. His dad's a lawyer.
How did he get into the bombing drug dealing business?
Because he's a leftist.
Wow.
He's a leftist 70s hippie. That's who he was in the 60s and 70s. And his girlfriend's mother thought he was molesting the girlfriend's daughter and kept Kimberlin from seeing her. Then she gets shot in the back of the head.
The mother?
The mother, the grandmother, who stopped him. She gets shot in the back of the head. Witnesses identify somebody who'd been arrested with Kimberlin in another drug operation. And he's the suspect for the motive of she'd stopped him from seeing the daughter. So then, in order to cover that up, he starts setting off bombs around Indiana.
This guy's crazy.
Now, he's working in 2016 with the Obama Department of Justice and working directly with Alexandra Chalupa, who's the Ukrainian DNC operative.
Right.
And this is reported by Chuck Ross in the Daily Caller. But he's also the guy who, after the election, and this is reported in BuzzFeed, was trying to get the dossier, a whole nother fake dossier on Trump that we haven't even seen because it turned out to be completely fake.
Well, so it was the first one, wasn't it?
But he's also, Brett Kimberlin's also going up on Capitol Hill, having meetings with Alexandra Chalupa and members of Congress about how they can stop Trump from taking the oath of office. Now, none of this is conjecture. Every single thing I'm telling you, just ask any part of it. I'll tell you where to look. You'll find, yep, that's been reported. Yep, that's Brett Kimberlin. If you go to his site, protectourelections.org. Furthermore, Alexandra Chalupa and Brett Kimberlin were working together during the election with the Department of Homeland Security, breaking into states' election systems.
What?
According to Alexandra Chalupa in a Facebook post the day after the election. So she fully admits it. We know that it happened, because remember those states were reporting they were getting broken into, and it turned out to be the DHS? Go look it up. You'll see.
I don't remember that. But that's
IPs from the DHS were coming in there.
Wow.
So she was working directly with Brett Kimberlin on that. So
Wow.
Brett's a leftist activist who, one of the people who's worked with him, thinks he's funded by Soros. I believe that's very probable.
Soros obviously has a lot to gain by raiding the Soviet Union. He hates Russia.
And they hate him, right? And he makes his money on currency manipulation, everything else.
He tried to crash the ruble, or the ruble,
Yes,
or whatever that currency is.
The man who broke the back of England and everything else. And the Soros, literally, when I say another Khodorkovsky organizations, the Open Russia Institute, which he named after Open Society.
Oh,
He works. I mean, you just look it up. They work directly together, and they complement each other.
so he's the Russian Soros, basically. Wow.
That's right. He's hiding in plain sight.
It's crazy.
Once you look it up, you'll go, well, why did no one pick up that McCain and Obama are sponsoring? Why did no one in the media? Well, I know why. Because he talked about it. He said he's spreading a lot of money around this town and has been.
Who talked about it?
Khodorkovsky. He talked directly about why he buys politicians. And Browder's talked about this too, but not with politicians. He's talked about, here's what it is. If you're, you know Wall Street people, you're in New York, right? So tell me what's worth more to a company. A story in the Wall Street Journal. What's worth more to your stock price? A positive story in the Wall Street Journal or some actual innovation? Probably the story in the Wall Street Journal, right?
Wow.
The innovation might take a lot longer, and Browder said that. And what's worse, if you want to sink a company's stock, get a bad story put in the Wall Street Journal. Don't forget where Simpson used to work, the Wall Street Journal.
I have a lot of questions about the Wall Street Journal. They've done some reporting about Peter Smith, specifically through Shane Harris, that I think is totally incorrect. And I called Shane to discuss it, and he hung up the phone on me.
We mentioned that before, but I still got to look into that.
Yeah.
But look, everybody's PR. That's what it is. That's what I said.
Except for you and me.
Well, yeah. In the mainstream media.
Yeah.
In the mainstream media, in the bought and sold media.
Right.
Everybody's PR. And I've been able to function independently by quitting or getting myself fired. Did I say I was fired? Well, no, here's what it was. Like in the case where I was fired from Breitbart, for instance, I was told, stop reporting on this or you'll be fired.
On this?
No, not on this. It was on Republican. It was on, it's a long story, but it was on Republican congressmen and election malfeasance.
Right.
And I was told to stop reporting on it, not on Breitbart, but independently.
Wow.
When I wasn't under contract, because they got a call from somebody saying, you got to stop Lee from reporting on this. And I wasn't under contract. I was being paid per piece.
Right.
And I specifically said, you can't tell me what to do. If you're paying me $100 a piece, which is what they're paying me, you can't therefore control me outside of that.
Right.
I'm going to do what I do. And they said, well, if you keep reporting on this, you're fired. I said, well, okay, then that's your choice. So when I say I got myself fired, I mean, that's what I mean.
That's really surprising.
I could have just stopped reporting on it.
But so this is actually dovetails perfectly into a blatant promotion, which is that you and I are going to be starting a show only on Patreon.
Yes.
We're going to be starting it next week at this time. We're still thinking of a name. We're going to
we should get a name
to the Crowdsource community for people to email us what name the show that Lee and I will do should be. But in all seriousness, I think it is extremely important that people support the independent journalists that they like for exactly the reason that you're describing. We cannot have these advertisers or these moneyed interests exerting influence over the outlets that are supposed to be giving us the news and digging into these reports and all these stories and everything.
And you can't trust anybody. And like I say, people, I work for Russia, but Russia doesn't tell me what to do. They've suggested in the entire time I'm there, maybe a dozen stories total ever, and none of them about the Browder thing, none of them about the Khodorkovsky thing. here's what it is. When you start to pull the threads on this, this is what comes up. And you just start to go, okay, why is nobody else talking about Khodorkovsky? And why is everybody on Fox falling for Browder's BS? Right. And why is, frankly, everybody at the Daily Caller? And why is Catherine Herridge and everybody? Why everybody? Why they just
Why? Why do you think that is?
I think that if they approach it, they would be fired. I think if they asked Bill Browder a tough question, they'd be in trouble. Mm-hmm. And I think it connects back to this moneyed. I think it connects to Genie Energy and oil and blah blah blah.
Now, are you currently on Patreon, or you're going to start?
So we're launching I'm launching my Patreon channel this weekend.
Okay, great.
And then the way our show is going to work,
it's the standard format for any of my only on Patreon shows, where people who are sponsors at patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, or whatever your Patreon page will be, they'll see our show on either of those channels.
That's right.
And I've been encouraging everyone to, like, in other words, if you're a $5 sponsor for Crowdsource the Truth, go $2.50 Crowdsource the Truth, $2.50 Lee, whatever. So that way,
I would just bring another $5 for both,
or whatever. But I'm just saying, it works best, I think. See, because I've had startup companies where I've had employees and stuff like that, and it's like the thing that I want to avoid is a situation where I just don't want to deal with employees, you know. If I do a show and people love your reporting, your Patreon grows, and it's a great way, I think.
And I'm stealing it. I'm talking to a couple other people who I'm going to do shows with. It's a great idea.
Because what it does is it squashes this method of creating 10,000 fake accounts and injecting fake comments and trying to steer the narrative. Trying to do all this stuff. By making it, I mean, I've set it to a minimum of $1 a month.
So I'm going to do the same thing.
If you want 10,000 fake accounts to tell me I'm a Jew or whatever you want to tell me, at least pay me $10,000 a month to do that. That's the idea. But seriously, it's like you can't get advertising on YouTube because the stuff that we're talking about is not suitable for advertisers. You can't get paid by an employer because they're going to tell you what to do or not to do because somebody there is being
I mentioned the other thing I'm going to do on my Patreon is going to be my solo thing that I'm going to do for sure. In addition to some short stuff, I got material that I built up over 10 years of doing journalism. So I have like lots of interviews. I have a lot of material. But the first thing I'm going to do is like an 8 or 10 week. I'm going to present it like I'm doing a college course.
Yeah.
That's going to start with how we got here. And so, for instance,
under the citizen journalism banner.
Kind of, but it's also like a history class that goes over how we got from 1776 to Cecil Rhodes in South Africa to World War II to now.
I want to see that. I don't trust this Cecil Rhodes guy. He's the Rhodes Scholar.
He started the Rhodes Scholar.
Yeah, I don't trust him at all.
So if you noticed in the Russian narrative that Brits are everywhere too.
Yes.
Why is that?
I don't trust them either.
I'll explain why.
Yeah.
I'll explain why. Once you see the history, it's very obvious. The short version being, remember when we didn't like the British?
Right.
For a long time. We didn't like the British.
They had that king and everything.
The king threw him off, and we're a colony who broke free from empire.
Right.
What happened was, around the end of the 1800s, the British started to realize, imagine like, I'm not going to ask, but you ever dump a girl, and then like you go, oh my God, and then she becomes like well-known or sort of rich or something. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, where you regret it.
We suddenly go like, oh, I really blew that one. And then you go, oh, I really blew that one. So that's what happened with the Brits. They looked at the U.S., they fought us in the Revolution, they fought us in the War of 1812, they helped our enemy, the Confederate Army, they built their Navy. The Confederates' Navy was all built in Liverpool. Go look it up.
Wow.
Except for a couple of the frigates, but look it up.
What about those submarines?
They were explicitly against the U.S. in the Civil War.
Wow. Because
slavery worked for their empire mode. So once they saw what was going on with the West, and then we figured gold is there, and now it goes to the Pacific Ocean, the Brits were like, hey, that was bad. So Cecil Rhodes was very explicit about this. the British were trying to maintain their empire. They looked at the U.S. and they realized we need to stop being their enemy. Because up till this point they were, don't forget. And we need to start being their buddies because they've got resources we need. And that relationship carried through to the beginning of the CIA.
Oh, yeah.
Where the CIA learned everything they knew about tradecraft and spycraft from the Five Eyes, from MI5, MI6, right? That's where they learned it from very explicitly to what's happening today. There's a reason the Brits are here now. This is all about maintaining empire, because empire is about going into other countries.
Well, that's what the U.S. is now.
And right, and we weren't. We didn't used to be that. We were not that at all until the Brits kind of pulled us into it with their military-industrial complex, which predated ours.
They love writing these dossiers also.
Yes, yes. And once you realize that we were really pulled into this, and part of the reason they're doing it is because the British MO is to go in and steal the resources of other countries. So that's what they did in South Africa, and that's what, right? And that's Rhodes is the guy who started it, and Rhodes is as clear as he can possibly be that we need to start literally his term, a secret society.
Wow.
To promote you, and you can see it in his everything, and things start to click. Once you read Rhodes, and he started the Oxford thing, he started the Rhodes Scholar thing, very intentionally.
I don't trust Oxford either.
What's that?
I don't trust Oxford
You shouldn't,
either.
because they're right at the center of all of this.
Well, when I went there, it was just like there was like, it's like, I mean, they physically ejected me for trying to talk to Eric Braverman.
Oh, really?
Well, they attempted to. I mean, one guy grabbed me, and I said, "You don't need to grab me," and I just left.
Yeah.
But they basically, they first came in there and tried to throw me out, and I talked my way out of that and went to the back room. They didn't let me get near Braverman, shoved him in an elevator, held me from going in the elevator. Nobody actually said leave, but I was so upset that I was like, I'm leaving.
You need a crash reel. Yeah. You know, when my brother used to do BMX, Jason knows my brother. He used to, the skaters and BMX riders would do crash reels, which is just where they like head planted. Yeah. You need that, like just the arrest, and just you getting manhandled.
Yeah, well, I was like an Oxford security guy, but so all right, we're over our hour here, and I'm getting pretty hungry, which I'm famous for.
Yeah.
But I want to take it back to we've got Mueller. He's investigating Russian interference. He was involved in Uranium One. He was involved in covering up what
Uranium One, by the way, everyone gets wrong.
Right.
Everyone gets wrong.
But Mueller was involved.
No, but wait, let me say, you know the guy who testified? Here's what everybody gets wrong. They think Uranium One was Putin. And nothing to do with Putin. Because...
Canadians, wasn't it?
No. Do you know, remember that guy who testified and said there was money being paid by Russia to a PR firm? Remember that?
I don't.
Look into it. You'll see it. That was APCO.
Huh.
Who's APCO represent? Khodorkovsky.
Right.
They're not pro-Putin at all. They're as anti-Putin as you can get. But the story's been pitched to people like Hillary is hooked up with Russia, and they don't make any distinction between Putin and Khodorkovsky.
Ah.
So the guy who hates Putin and wants to get him out, Khodorkovsky, is the same as Putin. So this is all I'm telling you.
And he hates Putin, to be clear, because Putin wants law and order. He wants people to not steal his country's resources. Because Putin stopped this guy from fleecing the country, which is what he was doing, and destroying the lives of Russian people. And the Russian people love Putin because he stopped these people from fleecing the country, because he saw what was going on. And when they put Putin in there, they thought he was controllable. Everybody's going to say you're a Russian agent, Lee.
Well, but
I think you're right.
Anybody can look this stuff up. And all you do is you start to run down the threads and ask yourself, why you haven't heard about Khodorkovsky? Because when you see it, you go, well, he's funding this Michael Weiss guy who, gee, when I look him up, gosh, he's written all these anti-Trump hit pieces. And he's into it. And he's connected directly to Browder, to Jonathan Weiner, to David Kramer. They're all connected to John McCain, by the way. Remember when McCain went to Syria and he was posing with that guy? Yeah. Michael Weiss is one of the people who set that up. Well, you can find Michael Weiss with Alexander Chalupa's sister, Andrea. They're friendly, too.
Wait, you're talking about when McCain was hanging out with the Free Syrian Army guys?
Yes. That's all directly connected to this. The Free Syrian Army thing is McCain. It's this guy, Michael Weiss, and it's another guy named Mustafa, who now is doing work right down the street at the Holocaust Museum.
What, that Holocaust Museum, Miranda's wife works there. Her last name is Wasserman. Is she related to Debbie Wasserman Schultz?
I don't know. But here's what it is. They did a big exhibit on Syria. It is exactly the
Holocaust Museum?
The Holocaust Museum did. And Nikki Haley and McMaster went there with the UN contingent to push this fake narrative using this Syrian exhibit. And the Holocaust Museum, they're deeply tied into this, unfortunately. And it's kind of perfect because what are you going to do? Protest the Holocaust? Hold up a sign in front
of that's why they do a lot of these things.
That is
right?
exactly why they do
It's exactly why the Clintons start a charity that's, they think of what's the most, like, we're going to help little kids with AIDS. How could you be against that? And then they steal all the money from it.
But see, this, do you know where this all goes back to? Cecil Rhodes and that group of people at the end of the 18th century. These are the elites who want to protect Britain, and they say philanthropy, you put yourself out as one way, and then you just do what you're going to do, right? But they think it's for the good, right?
Wow.
It's very, 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 like I say, there's no conjecture on this stuff, because when you look it up, you go, well, okay, well, that's...
Rachel Maddow is a Rhodes Scholar, right?
Oh, so completely believe it. There's so
and
many
her
people.
show is the launch pad for all this fake stories about Peter W. Smith, who was looking for Hillary Clinton's emails, and they're trying to pin the Russian collusion narrative on him because he's dead. Then they're trying to draw a connection between him and General Flynn because General Flynn had the goods on the creation of ISIS and all the...
When you start to get into this connects to Syria, it's all about, like I said, a lot is about oil. When you tie in Genie Energy, when you look at, I just challenge it. Go look at the Magnitsky Act, and you'll see the part about to protect the American investors of Yukos oil.
Right.
And if you don't know what Yukos oil is, and you say, well, it mentions Khodorkovsky too. I don't know why. Why would it be doing that? Well, because he paid for it. And this is all stealth.
Paid for the bill.
Yes, he lobbied
for
it.
the law.
So
you can buy laws.
Remember, I mentioned Bank Menatep. That's the bank that he bought.
Yeah.
If you go to Open Secrets, look up Menatep, M-E-N-A-T-E-P. You'll find they're the other lobbying firm that paid APCO.
It's crazy, Lee.
And by the way, the other law firm that they worked with is connected to Eric Holder.
Yeah, you're talking about Covington and Burling.
Yeah,
and they're representing General Flynn.
Right. So what I'm saying is, all of these relationships, these are not insignificant. Either. These are not insignificant relationships. Khodorkovsky is the guy behind all this. And when you look into it, he's connected with people, David Kramer, Jonathan Weiner, very directly connected to them.
You're talking basically about a 30-year con that's coming home to roost, and Trump is getting in there at the exact moment where he can gum up the works, and they're doing whatever they can to knock him out of the box.
That's exactly right. And the big thing here is, here's where the Mueller thing relates. The way this happened was they set up the Maidan in the Ukraine. Yeah. Soros funded it for about $200 million, according to him. The U.S. put billions into it. After the fall of the Ukrainian government, we installed, Victoria Nuland picked who would run it. You can hear it in a phone call on YouTube. Type in Victoria Nuland phone call, you'll find it. What happened was, we then set up a thing called NABU, the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of the Ukraine. It was run by, and who had an office there? The FBI. So Comey's running this Anti-Corruption Bureau. NABU, N-A-B-U. Now look this up. This is hiding in plain sight. When Manafort was knocked out of the Trump campaign, it was in August of 2016 when this story came out about the ledger that he was supposedly in, that showed illegal payments. Guess who gave the ledger? NABU. NABU's the one who gave the ledger. The guy they gave it to, Sergei Leschenko, is a Soros operative. He's a politician connected to all the people I'm mentioning, including Khodorkovsky, and it's 100% clear. So what I'm saying is, Comey's office, NABU, that was controlled by Comey, is the one who gave the ledger that got Manafort knocked out.
Wow. That's crazy.
But because people don't know what Naboo is, they didn't see the significance
Manafort firm received Ukraine ledger payout.
Right. That's the claim. And it comes from Naboo. That's where they got it from.
So they're making up stuff about Manafort as well?
Yes. And by the way, you can see that because the next year after the election, in March, the same people who done this came out and said, oops, we were wrong. Manafort's name wasn't in it. It was in, and only Bloomberg published. It was in Bloomberg in March of 2017. You can find it. But that's the only place that published it.
The retraction, you mean?
Like I found it mentioned in a CNN article 14 paragraphs down. That's the only other place. Somebody found it. They're
the
like,
retraction you're talking about. Right?
No, there wasn't even a retraction. It was just another story.
Huh.
They never retracted the story. They were just like...
Okay.
So it's very, very deep, but the good thing about it, it's extremely provable.
And then, so with Mueller, he's announced just the other day that he's going to wait until after the midterm elections to release his report. Doesn't that just reek of he's got nothing and the mystery of it?
It does, and that's why this new indictment today is more phony BS, because that whole Russia indictment about the Facebook thing literally makes no sense.
Well, they're accused of buying Facebook ads.
They're accused of buying Facebook ads.
Can't anybody buy a Facebook ad? If you don't like Hillary Clinton and you're living in Russia, can't you call Facebook and say, give me $100,000 worth of ads that say I don't like Hillary?
Here's the other thing. They weren't 100... Anybody who knows anything about marketing or propaganda or anything knows that repetition is key, right? And if you do advertising, they tell you, well, what did you buy? I bought one ad on Facebook. No one does that. You have to run it over and over. If you look at the ads that Russia's accused of posting, there's no common message. And in fact, a lot of the ads, which there's not many of them, there's very few, a lot of the ads, like for instance, like they sponsored like a LGBT channel, this company. So let's take them at their word. Let's say that
Russia sponsored that?
Right, yes. And the posts were things like, I can't even see straight. And like that kind of
nonsensical
clickbait. Right? So I think that this company was doing clickbait. I think they were doing clickbait for no political reason. They were doing clickbait for why do people do clickbait? To build mailing lists and niches and all that stuff. I see no reason, I see nothing in there that doesn't indicate that. And that's what it seems like they're doing. And that's not illegal. But it's a new indictment is based on the February one, you know. This new indictment today is not new, it's old.
That's the way they do it, is just keep dredging up old nonsense, keep making up fake stuff.
It's one of the tools Mueller has, is indictments. It's one of the things he can do to affect the news cycle.
Wow.
He makes an indictment, the media goes along with it, because as I say, they're PR people, they don't even bother to read it. And they know what the narrative is going to be, and nobody on the left or right challenges it. And it took me a while to figure out, because I was, and still am, part of the right, how the mechanism functioned on the right, because it doesn't function. I've known how it functions on the left for a while, because it's obvious. Because Soros writes big checks. It's not as obvious on the right, but when you look into it, you go, okay, I see what it is.
Well, Lee, this has been great, and we're gonna next week we'll start our regular show. We're gonna look to the members of the viewing audience to provide some suggestions for what we should call it. It's going to be available only on Patreon, so obviously very thankful for the generous Patreon supporters. They keep this kind of work going.
But I should say too, one of the good things, Jason. See, you know me. I like to see on this. I like to keep it casual, so I'm keeping it casual. Yeah. But I will say this: one of the good things is you and I will be able to talk more.
Yeah.
Because we don't talk like there was after I went to Helsinki.
Yeah.
We didn't talk.
You were busy as hell.
And you were too.
Yeah.
And you didn't talk. So I was telling people one of the good things I'm looking forward to, like everybody I'm looking at doing a show with, are people who I like talking to.
Yeah.
And don't talk to enough.
There you go.
For no reason, but I got a wife and kids, and if we're going to talk, we might as well be doing it forever.
Have a show.
You know what I'm saying? So
absolutely.
So that's one of the things I'm looking forward to.
A lot of fascinating topics.
Because this is mostly just me yammering.
No. It was very good, very interesting. I hope people have enjoyed it, and we'll see everybody next week. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great night.